Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write for some stuff, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association as well.
And my name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
Yes, you are.
Indeed.
So this week, like every week, we're going to talk about some movies. But before we do, we just want to remind you that we have a Patreon. And every week we put out exclusive audio or bonus episodes for our patrons. And for this week, we did a patron's choice that was The Warriors, the 1979 film. So go check it out if you can.
Yeah.
So for this week, we're going to be talking about the films Sator, Shook, Framing Britney Spears, and Minari, or Minari, depending on how you pronounce it.
Why couldn't you say Minari if you're going to get it wrong? Why didn't do it that way?
Because that's not a correct pronunciation.
I know. That's my point.
Well, so I pronounced it the Korean way, but you can also obviously pronounce it the American way.
Yeah. I mean, there are people out there, I don't know why they do this, but they say Italian and Iran. I mean, what the fuck? So there's got to be one person who said Minari. So that's all I'm saying.
There could be, certainly.
But
anyway, back to the show.
Yes, they are not on this show.
So we're going to kick things off by talking about the horror film Sator.
Yes.
And this film, this has an interesting backstory. So Jordan Graham is the director and the writer, but he's also the editor and the composer of the musical score.
Whoa.
And I think the lighting, and like he did basically all of the post-production. And this took years to get released because it was basically like a one-man show doing all of the post-production work. So just kind of interesting. This is also a merging of a fictitious film and documentary, which I did not realize until after I had seen the film.
I did not realize at all.
Yeah, this is a very personal story. And basically what the premise is that this main character, Adam, his family can hear voices or hear a spirit or some entity called Sator. And it's about that and it's kind of a possession film. But Jordan Graham in real life, his grandmother apparently really heard voices, like the recordings that are interspersed in the film. That's her.
Whoa.
Grandmother of Adam and the other and his two siblings. That's his real grandmother in real life. So yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm so glad I'm sitting alone in my house with my back to an open space.
Yeah, I will say, Evan, I'm really curious what you think about this, because this is a film it's a slow burn. I think you would have actually really liked it because it's very, very slow. It takes a long time to build. It's a lot of mood. It's very creepy. It's in the woods, a lot of night shots. There's some people being set on fire. that happens in the beginning and the end.
Yep.
Kind of reminded me a lot of the Dark and the Wicked, or The Wicked in the Dark. I always forget the order of that film.
Dark and the Wicked.
Yeah, it reminded me in many ways of The Dark and the Wicked, the kind of family being haunted by a malevolent spirit. And this kind of follows that too. But the thing of it is that you're kind of, while you're watching it, is there really a malevolent spirit?
Good question.
Yes, but Evan, I want to know what you think of this.
Sure. Well, first I have to say, this is, for our Jewish listeners, this Sator is Sator, not Sator, like the Passover meal. I have to say, when I mentioned to Shauna that we were watching this, she got very excited for a moment, and then I explained what the movie was, and then her hopes were dashed. Yeah, I did not know all that backstory about the film. I actually just finished watching it before we recorded, so it's really interesting to hear that backstory, because the next thing I'm going to say is Sator, I hardly even know what this movie is about. I just
whoa.
There were times where I found it a little bit hard to follow, but I agree with you that it is very creepy and atmospheric. And I think, Dave, you would like this, to Megan's point, because it is such a slow burn kind of movie. A lot of atmosphere. I like the switch in aspect ratio, especially the way when he goes to visit his grandmother and any of the kind of like home video footage is all 4:3, right? It's like really just like narrow and claustrophobic and like black and white for the most part. I think all of those scenes at the grandma's house, it's
A little grainy. Yeah.
So I dug that aspect of it. And there's just a lot of like really interesting like shots in the woods, and the way they're lit is extremely creepy. Like location. Like this movie has excellent locations. Like the woods trudges through. There's like this large, I don't know, it's like overturned trees that he's standing on at one point. There's this like old stone wall that looks like an edge to like a fort. There's some type of like cave in the middle of the woods. I don't know if that was like built or that was there. There's just a lot of like really effective use of the woods to create creepiness. And this reminded me of, I haven't seen The Dark and the Wicked, but this did remind me of a lot of similar movies of its like involving like demons, possession, spirits. In some ways it was like creepy in an Evil Dead kind of way. It's like atmospheric almost to me, and like an It Comes at Night kind of way. And then it's got this like found footagey aspect to it that's kind of like the VHS Blair Witch kind of vibe. And I thought this was an effective blending of genres. I had trouble engaging with the story, I think. And I don't know if it's because it was just such a long, slow burn, or I don't know, maybe I was in the right mood when I was watching it, but I just had trouble plugging into what was going on, even though I liked the atmosphere and I liked visually what it was doing.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. It's funny. I also very much got a Blair Witch vibe from it, because of the deer skull and antlers that some of the
oh my god
entities wear. It reminded me of Dark and the Wicked had that. The Wretched had that. The Pale Door had that. Like, I'm like, what is it with deer antlers and skulls? It's very strange. But anyway, it also reminded me, because of the forest and a lot of the night shots, it reminded me in certain ways of The Witch as well, like visually. Which is, oh God, that movie's so great. But anyway, yeah. So it definitely feels like it's. I don't even want to say borrowing from, because it's not, but it definitely feels like it's touching on a lot of other subgenres and works within horror. But yeah, I really liked the visuals tremendously. I loved how unsettling and eerie it is. I do know what you mean about engaging with the story. There were parts that I was like, wait, what happened to his brother? Wait, what happened to his sister? Is she dead? Where's the dog? And then I was like, oh, there they are. Okay. So yeah, so there are a lot of, so I really like that the film is not holding our hand and there's not a lot of exposition. Like, it's a very quiet movie, which is so interesting considering that there's so many home videos of the grandmother talking about like automatic writing, where she's just like writing and she doesn't know what she's writing because she just hears voices and she's writing what they write. And the mother did that too, apparently, and she was trying to like reunite with the spirits and reunite with Sator. But yeah, but it is a very quiet film, and I really appreciate that, and I really enjoyed that, because that can be the absence of sound, the silence can be really unnerving as well. But there were also some great visuals too. Like you said, one of the things that was my favorite is when Adam meets Sator, or who he thinks is Sator, because that's what the grandmother calls Sator, a he, but whomever extends a finger, but the finger, instead of a claw, has teeth, like small,
it's like a jawbone.
Bones. Yes. I'm like, oh my God, that is great. That is genius. I love that. It was such a great visual. I was like, oh my God, it's fantastic. It was really creepy, really effective. Yes.
Yeah, the way he has to walk between the arches with it's like waterfalls on either side, and then he goes and it's like sitting on the throne. It's oh, the creature design, just super creepy. I mean, just it's got like a deer skull mask face, and then the creepy, like, I don't know, when he sees it take off its mask, and then there's just like that bald, hairless person.
That's his mother.
Oh my God, that was so creepy.
Yeah, that's his dead mother.
Ugh.
And then he is bald later when he starts killing people.
Yeah. And the ending shot in the
Adam
film.
starts killing people?
Yeah,
yes,
he does.
Adam, the protagonist, starts killing people because you learn right before the end of the film that his sister and brother have like sequestered him, and his brother is not too happy about it. And she's like, well, she's like, you didn't even have to make that choice. I did. And she's like, we can't be around him. He can't be around people. So... And then they're clearly alluding to the fact that he's hurting people. And then he did try to hurt somebody because there's that woman who I think was the girlfriend of his brother or something. And he's like choking her. And then but he's like, oh my God, what am I doing? And then she runs away. And then she gets like lifted up into the sky. It's such a great shot. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yikes. Sounds crazy.
Yes. And more immolation, just like last week.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking that. It was feeling very Saint Maud with people setting themselves or being set on fire, because I don't think anybody really set themselves on fire.
No, they did not.
But the last shot of the film, I think, was excellent. It's so creepy. So like Dave, Adam has like, he's stripped himself down to his like white underwear, like his long johns and everything, and he's like murdering everybody. And then he like comes into the grandma's cabin, and she's sitting in this like den, and she's sitting in a chair, and Sator is sitting next to her, and you see this like wide shot of him walk into the room wearing like all white. He sits down in a chair like opposite them, and then you see this long wide shot of them all sitting together in the den, and that's like the end of the movie, and it's so fucking creepy.
But they look at the camera. Like, that's what's even more like, ugh. Oh, I know what else I wanted to say. This is just a minor thing, but I wanted to say, Evan, you were talking so eloquently about the setting, and that was shot at Yosemite Valley, Yosemite National Park. And I'm like, what a great usage of space there. Yes.
Yeah, that's see, Megan, you did all this great research to like inform this movie that I just watched. So I'm appreciating more aspects of it, even if I didn't like engage as much as I wanted to when I was watching it.
Yeah, no, I definitely can understand. It was a little hard to engage with. I still totally dug it because of the aesthetic and the mood and all of that. And I really liked this. But yeah, no, I could definitely understand how it might be a little hard to follow what's happening or be fully engaged. But yeah, but no, I thought this was great. I really liked this a lot.
Cool.
You spoiler pieced me into it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. I really want to know what you think of it, because I do. I think this is one you'll like.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Okay. This seems like a Dave movie.
People killing people, setting them on fire, being creepy.
Sure. All things that I like. Oh, I can't believe I just said that.
All in good fun and jest.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Evan, do you have any last words on this before we transition to the next film?
No, let's talk about Shook.
So this is another horror film. Yay, more horror. And this is a woman-directed horror. Yay. Mm-hmm. And it's, Women in Horror Month. That's always exciting to talk about women-directed horror. And
women directing horror? What's the world coming? Sorry.
Oh, Dave, you can't even pull that off.
No, I really can't.
I think I heard him ducking on the other side. I know,
right?
Anyway.
Yes. So, Shook. Yeah, this is written and directed by Jennifer Harrington. And this is about Mia, who is a makeup artist on Instagram. Well, we don't even know if it's Instagram, but it's some kind of Instagram analog. And Evan, do you want to take it away, the rest of the plot, or would you like me to keep going?
I'll attempt a summary, but basically she is a social media star, and she's at an event where Is she? Yeah, she's at the event, this like red carpet
she-
thing, which is not as grandiose as they're portraying it.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, there's another influence there. Her name is Chanel, I think.
I don't even know.
If I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, no. So she is murdered there.
Ooh.
So like the aftermath of this is that Mia was supposed to do some big live stream with her friends, and she's like, no, I don't think I should do that. I think I should like lay low and just, like take this time to be like totally selfless at what she says she's going to watch her sister's dog.
Yes.
And so she like goes to her sister's house to watch her dog while her sister goes to San Francisco. I don't remember exactly why. I think she had to have some tests done.
Yes.
Because
Huntington's disease, which is not a real disease.
Yes. So the premise there is that the sister has been taking care of their mom who recently passed away from this disease, which is basically like dementia from what I understand. Like it's like kind of like dementia, but also like the body shuts down.
Yeah, it's like MS and dementia kind of in tandem together, sort of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she says, okay, I'll watch the dog, and then she's there with the dog, and all sorts of like just weird, creepy stuff starts happening. That's the gist of it. Like she's there, and like her friends are still doing this like stream that they were supposed to do that she's sitting out of, and just like she gets weird friend requests and calls from this guy Kellen who lives across the street, or so she thinks, and just it just sets off this chain of events where she's constantly being put in situations in the house where she's being terrorized. And I think that's about as much summary as we need to get into at the moment, unless you think there's something else I should have added, Megan.
No, there's like a lot that happens. So
right.
Yeah, I think that's a good beginning summary. Yes.
Start.
So do I have this correct? That the DMs are coming from inside the house?
You do. That I know.
Yes.
That's the title of a review. I saw that.
Oh, is it really?
Yes, it really is.
Oh,
wow.
Well, hey,
spoilers.
me.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like in some ways this movie went in a very predictable direction for me. In other ways, it didn't. Like the twist, I think I was able to see coming.
Oh, interesting. I didn't really, but I don't think I was looking for it too hard.
What is the twist?
The twist is that her sister is really bitter about having to have taken care of their mom, and also seems to have become unhinged, likely due to this disease that seems to be that like she's now like murdering people because she's losing her mind. I thought that's what the movie was implying, and I thought that was kind of just a little bit icky, but okay.
Ableist as fuck and gross. I'll go full tilt that it is horrible in that regard. I think it's gross and awful.
Right. Yeah. So it's like a combination of like bitterness and also just losing her mind due to this disease. So she's the one terrorizing her, and she murders her friends who initially are there like as a prank. They're like pranking her and live streaming the prank where they're like terrorizing her and making her think that they're being held captive, and she's got to choose between them, and she sees all this evidence that like they're being murdered or tortured or whatever, and then it turns out, oh, it's a prank. But no, wait, it's not. The sister actually goes and murders all of them.
Ugh.
Yeah. And we haven't even talked about the thing that is super icky in this film too, in addition to the ableist shit, is that and I got a very kind and lovely text from Shauna warning me about this, but I'd already seen the film. There's a dog murder on the loose, but really it's the sister who's going around murdering dogs to look like a dog serial killer, and her dog is threatened, so Mia thinks, and then we see dead dogs. It's gross. It's unnecessary and gross.
It is. It's extremely unnecessary. It's extremely gross. I don't know why you'd write in a dog killer, especially when the dog killing is just a matter of like, it's not relevant.
Superfluous. Yeah, it is not relevant at all. At all. That's what pissed me off even more, was that it is not relevant in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I think so this movie, like, it went some predictable directions. Like I was reasonably sure it was the sister, and the sister was bitter. But I don't understand why we had the whole dog killing subplot. That didn't make any sense to me, and I thought it was just gross and excessive. The leg breaking scene I thought was unnecessarily torturous.
What?
Yeah, her sister puts her in a situation where she says, you have 5 minutes to find a way to break your leg, otherwise I kill your friend. And instead of running down to confront her sister, she actually like breaks her leg. And you're like, why? You could just literally run down there and like confront your sister. She's downstairs. She's right there.
That is true, but I did like it.
Does she kill the friend anyway?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well.
Yes, she does. Yeah. So I had seen, before I watched this, I saw there were people comparing this to Scream and to Saw, and I definitely can see why. It is, calls coming in from the house, and it reminded me of those films. And I'm not a Saw fan, but I do love Scream. And it reminded me of that. It also reminded me of films that do online discussions or streaming so much better, like Host and Searching. And those felt tense, and in the case of Host, really scary and innovative. And this did not. This felt incredibly derivative to me, with the addition of dog killing, which is just abysmal and unnecessary. The other thing was that really took me out of it was that everything was so fake. Like, we're not using Instagram, we're using some weird analog. We're not using a real disease, we're using some other disease, which I get why you would avoid using a real disease, because then there would be even more claims, arguably, of ableism, although I still don't care. I still think it's ableist as fuck. But I can see why. But I also was wondering, why are we opening up on this fake red carpet with these makeup artists? And I was like, is the film trying to provide some kind of commentary on their vapidness or shallowness or fakeness? And that really felt gross to me too, because makeup is an incredibly massive artistry. And I think it's absolute bullshit to think that, oh, you're a makeup artist, you're just some vapid asshole. Like, no. And there are better ways to make a commentary on the shallowness and fakeness of social media personas, but it doesn't do that very effectively here. And so I was irritated by that. I was irritated that there are only white women in this movie. I was irritated about the dog murdering. What I will say, the one good thing I thought about this film, besides the leg breaking scene, which I actually weirdly do like, is I think that the woman who plays Mia, you see, her name is Daisy Tudor. I think she's really good. Like, I was surprised at how, amidst a movie that I thought was not very good, I thought she was good. So I liked her performance. But that's unfortunately and really sadly, her performance is really the only thing I liked about this film.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. I was also quite disappointed by this movie and was hoping it might say something interesting about social media personalities, but instead it just delves into traditional horror and just goes to some torturous and unnecessary places. I think I'd agree that the lead performance is good. I liked some of the elements, some of the atmospheric elements, like the effects. I liked the way that the social media or the texting would project onto the wall. I thought that was a cool effect.
I hated that. I'm glad you liked it. I really genuinely am. I absolutely hated that. It bugged me.
Yeah, I liked some of the projection effects. I think that added a cool atmosphere. I liked some of the parts where she was imagining things and the people were in the room, except the whispering in her ear when the person was supposed to be texting her. That was fucking creepy.
Because ASMR is.
Yeah. I was not a fan of that. Like,
what about ASMR? Hold on.
There's whispering.
Yeah. So like when the villain, when we think it's a man, is texting her, she imagines him being right next to her ear, like shrouded in darkness. And we just see like the lower half of his face whispering in her ear. And it's,
I see.
It's annoying and overused. And I just was not a fan. So I don't know. I like some of the atmospheric elements. And I think the movie started off kind of strong and I was really interested to see where it went. And then the longer it went on, the more I just became agitated with it. It just became such a slog to get through. Although I did really like the part at the end where she was sprawled out on the ground and the rideshare guy was like, "Are you Mia?" And she's like, "No." I thought that was funny.
I liked it more when you just told it right now. Yeah. And she jumps over the banister so she can break her other leg and she's lying on the ground and her sister comes lying next to her and her sister's like, "Why didn't you choose me? You picked your friend over me." And I'm like, I don't even fucking care about you. And
don't care.
Right. Like, this is supposed to be moving or something, but it's like, you're murdering people you killed your mother. Like, I don't know. And I actually don't mind that it's straight up horror. Like, I like that, but I just don't think this was very effective. I think there are moments that kind of like glimmer of potential great scenes, and they're gone in like a fraction of a second. So yeah, for me, this did not work at all. Except for the performance, unfortunately. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, this was a big nope for me. Sad to say.
Hard same.
All right. Well, let's talk about our next, I was going to say movie, but it's not really a movie. It is an episode, a mini documentary of the New York Times Presents on FX and on Hulu. And this particular episode is framing Britney Spears, talking about the iconic pop singer's conservatorship that her father has kind of a stranglehold over her and her money and her career. So let's dig into this. What did you guys think?
As far as documentaries go, it was a little slow moving. Even at 74 minutes or whatever it is, it's kind of like, can we amp this up, please? I mean, I think it did a really good job of explaining what a conservatorship is. And in that very New York Times sort of way, you had the one lawyer who couldn't speak about that particular conservatorship, meaning Britney Spears. But then it says, like, there's a card that comes up afterwards, like, after she filmed this interview, she went back to work for for Britney Spears' dad. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that was terrible.
But I thought it was really good at laying the groundwork of what the late 90s was like in terms of pop culture and the sexism and misogyny that Britney Spears has been dealing with since she, put out her first record. I always, I was probably guilty of this too, because I was young and stupid once. But I'm always just kind of amazed by how cruel everybody is to women. I don't know how else they play a bunch of Monica Lewinsky jokes because they mention that Spears' first album broke when when Bill Clinton's impeachment trial was going on. Just watching like Jay Leno, who is a hack anyway, and Letterman and all of these people, tell these just fucking horrific jokes about Monica Lewinsky when, the most powerful person in the world is also half of that equation. It gave me an appreciation for just finally telling these kinds of stories. And whatever you think of Britney Spears' music or whatever else, it would seem to me, given the evidence presented in the documentary and other things you read, that she's pretty much entirely in control of herself. So what the fuck is this all going on for still?
To steal her money.
Yeah. I mean, 1.5% of her money, but that's when you generate as much money as she does. That's pretty significant. What I thought was the most striking, and I didn't know this, I've kind of followed the Free Britney Spears movement just because I think it's fascinating. I didn't realize that her father was one conservator, and then there was a lawyer who was one too, and he asked for more money, and then all of a sudden he quit before the judge made a decision about whether they would get more money. And I just thought, well, why is this guy quit? Why is this guy leaving this gravy train? Which of course nobody can answer because he wouldn't be interviewed.
Right.
So it just seems like there's a bunch of icky, gross shit rooted in sexism and misogyny going on in Britney Spears' life.
Which is incredibly sad and extreme in this case, but it's not a surprise for any woman in the spotlight, or any woman just in general, but especially in the spotlight, especially in the music industry, especially in the 90s, like, it adding on. But I definitely thought this was a really sad and intriguing examination of sexism and toxicity in the media and culture at large. I just want to point out, because Dave, you're absolutely right about all the comedians making jokes. And because I know this just made the rounds again, that's why I so appreciate Craig Ferguson coming out and saying, I'm not going to make jokes about Britney Spears when he was doing his show. And he's like, she's just a baby.
Oh, right. That was like an iconic moment.
Yes. And he's clearly a class act because he's like, she's a baby herself. She has babies. Like, I'm not going to do this. He's like, humor's supposed to be joyous. I'm not going to sink and drag someone. And that I wish there was more kindness and humanity in humor, because we're supposed to be, humor's supposed to punch, up. It's not supposed to punch down. But anyway, yes,
Right.
I agree with everything you're saying, Dave. Everything.
Gracias.
De nada.
Evan, how do you feel? And Megan, how do you feel? Aside from agreeing with everything I said.
Evan, you go first and then I'll share.
Sure. I think this documentary is a good primer for people who aren't familiar with what's been going on with Britney Spears. I think if you do follow, I think in some ways it's a little bit of a shallow examination. I know that there's a lot of people that they can't interview because they just wouldn't make themselves available to comment on the story.
A lot.
But yeah, the list is very long at the end of the documentary. But I listened to, there's a podcast out there called Even the Rich, and they did a 4-episode series on Britney Spears and hashtag Free Britney. I think provides like a really in-depth examination of like her life and how she got to a point where she had this conservatorship. I don't know, it's installed, I guess is the right term or not. Yeah, I think that provided me like a really good understanding of like the angles of this. But what I think that this documentary does well is, like you guys were saying, it really delves into the misogyny aspect of it in a way that I think gets people thinking more critically about how Britney was portrayed in the media and how looking back and seeing this from a different angle, it's a very logical like breakdown, like what happened in terms of like her emotional state and why she just got to this point where she felt so frustrated and so like unable to control anything in her life that like shaving her head felt like the only like viable way to kind of like lash out. I mean, like you just see like she's just blanketed by paparazzi like all the time, and you see these like old videos where like, she can't even drive, she can't even move. Like, how do you expect anybody to like react to that? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'd also like to know why, and this is such a cliche in films, so it's probably partly rooted in that, but why the fuck is a woman shaving her head automatically tantamount to having some kind of nervous breakdown? Like that's absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense that she would want to separate, even in a moment, separate herself from her image that was so carefully constructed by her, by others. Yeah, so it totally makes sense that, she's been objectified, she's been sexualized ever since she was a girl. So it makes sense that she would want to remove something that might add to her femininity. Or I know I saw someone say this, I believe on Twitter, talking about how it makes sense that she wouldn't want to be touched because she kept saying that, like, I don't want to be touched. And so she removed her hair and because it's something that people touch. So yeah, it completely, like when you watch it, it's like, yeah, it makes sense, and living through it made sense to me. Like, yeah, anyway, yeah, it never made sense why people are like, oh my God, she's losing it, she's not fit. And yeah.
It was none of our fucking business. And it's just like watching this, it's like so gobsmackingly obvious now how much it was none of our business as the world, as the media, whatever was going on in Britney Spears' life, none of our fucking business. And just utterly ridiculous that we got to that point, putting so much pressure on her and so many expectations and just like the sexism and the misogyny of all of it, and how we treated her and how we treated every other public figure at that time. And still do. But like, the Paris Hilton, Amanda Bynes, Lindsay Lohan, like all of the women of that, Christina Aguilera, all of the women of that, like, late 90s, early 2000s, like, oh my God, what were we thinking? What were we doing? We did some fucked up shit as a society with them.
I mean, again,
anyway. Yeah, you won't get any argument from me.
No,
I mean,
the only argument I will get is that it was happening long before that, and it's been happening long since. But what really, I think, crystallizes it at that time was the rise of paparazzi and just the kind of the explosion of paparazzi, making it so much easier to follow every single moment in a celebrity's life, and in kind of a disgusting way. And so that leads them to more scrutiny, leads women to being set up for failure and having to attain these unattainable standards of perfection. And the fact that Britney Spears' motherhood was constantly called into question is just revolting, absolutely revolting. Yeah. Anyway, it's so horrible. Weirdly, the one thing that stuck out to me as you were talking, Evan, also so eloquently about this, is that I kept thinking about the moment where I can't even think of his name. Oh my God. I cannot think of his name. The interviewer talking about to switch over to Anderson Cooper, Larry King, and then Michael Moore is on, and he's like, "Oh, did you want to say something?" He's like, "Yeah, why don't we leave her alone?" And I'm like, "Thank you, Michael Moore, of all people."
I know.
Yeah, and also the "Leave Britney Alone" kid. Don't you know?
But that was that's you mentioned that off mic, Dave. That where was that kid?
Yeah, where was that?
That's the
Should have
thing.
been there.
Yeah, I wanted to say there are some strange. I don't know, and they're minor, but they felt like strange omissions to me. Like there's that, but there's also like in a discussion of her career, there are a lot of gaps that we don't talk about, or the documentary chooses not to talk about, which is fine. But like, for instance, there's no discussion of her film career being in Crossroads, or, the I'm not a girl, not yet a woman. And like that to me felt like it would be a perfect time to pivot or talk about that conversation about her being in control of her image or not, or what have you. And so, yeah, there were some minor things. And I'm like, wait, why is that not included? Which then made me think about other things like, wait, what else is not being included? And it is a really kind of a strange, interesting choice to have the woman who is the Felicia, the assistant, so heavily prominent, especially in the beginning parts of talking about her career, Britney's career, Britney Spears' career, and then also so many of the Free Britney activists, and which is fine, I guess, but it's like I really wanted to focus more on the conservatorship, and I really wanted to focus more on the misogyny in the media. That I think is where the doc gets it really right. And so to me, these other things felt more like distractions and felt like they weren't necessarily adding to the picture of what's happening. So it was for me, a little frustrating. But I still found this really engaging and interesting, even if I was questioning some of the choices.
Sure.
And on a side note, I really liked seeing Wesley Morris because I like his writing. So I like seeing him in this, talking so much about misogyny and the patriarchy.
Yeah, you've made all really excellent points, Megan. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, this documentary it's a bit of a mixed bag. Like I think there are things that it does like really right, and I wish it had been longer, because I feel like we could have gotten into more depth on some other things. And I saw one person comment on Twitter that they were disappointed that there weren't more women who were critics, or I don't know what the right term is, like pop culture experts also commenting on the misogyny. It was kind of like a male heavy cast of characters, and I feel like that was a perspective that was noticeably absent,
which is really really weird considering the director is a woman. Like I found that I agree with whomever said that on Twitter, because actually, and the writer too, Liz Day is the senior story editor on this and writer, and Samantha Stark was the director. And so that is interesting. And we do have the one woman who's the editor at the New York Times who's talking pretty heavily. But you're right. We don't, we get Dave Holmes, we get Joe Coscarelli, we get Wesley Morris, and, they're all great. But where are the women, music journalists? Where are the women, pop culture critics? And where are they? I absolutely agree. And I'm so glad you brought up that point.
Yes.
And it feels really, it feels like a glaring oversight in a documentary that is especially, about misogyny and about a woman amidst misogyny and made by women. It's like, it's very strange.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
I almost want like a behind the scenes of like making of this. Like, what were the decisions? Why did you make these decisions?
Yeah, I think that would be interesting and I wonder how much of it was like limited by the fact that they like, if they were talking to people who are like in the media industry, that they're like, let's try and stick as much as possible to New York Times people, or like how much directive they had there.
That's a great point too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So could have been better, but it was a good primer. Isn't that what you said, Evan?
Yeah. I think it's really informative if you haven't been following the story at all, which you should be. But if you haven't been, it's a good way to kind of get a quick catch up on what's been going on with Britney Spears and what all the current litigation around her conservatorship is about. and also some recent conversations that have happened because of this documentary. And like Justin Timberlake, this documentary, it targets him, and by pointing out like the really shitty things that he did to Britney and to Janet Jackson. And so that has gotten him to come out and issue an apology. I don't know if he individually reached out to them. He should have. But he did make an apology to Britney and to Janet Jackson for how he treated them.
I know.
Take that for however you want it. I think, that's another part of this conversation that's happening. So if you saw that apology somewhere in there and we're kind of like, where did this come from? Well, this documentary played very heavily into it.
Yeah, that's making me think, Evan, talking about that and this whole conversation actually is making me think I want another documentary on the misogyny, but also because all the women that you mentioned, aside from Christina Aguilera, who is Latina, all of the women that you mentioned about who were, raked over the coals in the 90s were white women. And and that doesn't even, get to, Beyonce and Destiny's Child and, Janet Jackson and how she, was treated terribly. Like, yeah, I definitely want a documentary that looks at all of the misogyny in media for, women musicians and and racism and how they intersect and all of that. Anyway, that's a lot to tackle.
Yes, but worthy subjects.
Worthy subjects, absolutely. But yeah, no, this is a good introduction. I think it with some strange oversights and some strange omissions. But again, I do wonder how much of that, you're right, because of the New York Times. Did they have to stick with certain New York Times writers and critics? And also because they couldn't talk to Britney Spears, none of her family would talk to them. So yeah, anyway, but a good introduction. All right. Well, did you guys have any final thoughts before we move on to our final film of the night?
Nah, not me.
No.
Well, let's talk about, and I'm very excited to talk about this. I'll just say that right up front because I talked about this last year on the show very briefly. I am very, very excited to talk about Lee Isaac Chung's film Minari. And this is a film about a Korean American family who move from California to Arkansas. Yep. I don't know why we thought it was Oklahoma. Moved to Arkansas to start a farm because the father wants to start a farm. Okay, so what did you guys think of it?
It's good.
All right, well then that's the show. No, I kid.
I don't know. It's kind of unlike. What is it unlike? It's unlike a lot of movies in that it's good. Haha. I really appreciated its kind of quietness in many parts. But I was also on the edge of my seat the entire time because I kept expecting David, the little boy with the heart murmur, to die, which thankfully he does not.
No.
Because he is also the cutest child actor who's ever lived. I mean, my God, that kid is adorable.
He is adorable.
But I was also really, the performances I thought were borderline profound, except for Will Patton, who's always kind of Will Patton-ish.
Oh, I liked Will Patton, but yes, I agree.
He's fine. I really, really dug the grandma.
Oh my God! Yes. So that is that's Yoon Yao Jung, and she's a legend in Korean cinema, and she's been in acting for 55 years, and she's amazing in this.
Yeah, and Steve Yeun was great. I mean, just what a versatile performer,
Yes, I love him.
The other thing that I thought was really compelling, and somebody can kind of try to, do more story specific stuff, but I thought the score was amazing. Like, I don't usually sit around and think about score, but I was just really moved by it. I didn't think it was necessarily surprising or, it was just appropriate. I don't know, but it was also very beautiful. Any spray. That's where I come down. I liked it a lot. I don't really have any great critical insights though.
Well, this movie made me want to hug my grandma.
Aww.
It made me really sad that I can't see my grandma right now. It is a very sweet movie in so many ways, but it's bittersweet because, oh man, I think toward the end it takes such a tragic, tough turn. I spent the movie with like a pit in my stomach, knowing that something was going to go wrong with this situation, and it was kind of like waiting to see what aspect would go wrong. Would it be that that David, the son, would something would happen to him with his heart, or the crops would fail, or they'd go broke, or any combination of these things? And it just made me so sad because I was rooting for this family so much. Like I so badly wanted them to succeed and to prosper and to make this new life, even if it's not exactly what the mom and the family wanted. Like I wanted them to succeed, and I wanted them to have the choice to go somewhere else and not have the choice kind of like made for them, which is really tragic. But the performances in this movie are just so damn good. Like everybody is really good. And yeah, I even like Will Patton, even though I feel like he's probably a weak link by comparison. I feel like everyone though is just so amazing, and they do so much acting with their face, specifically with their eyes. There's just so many moments in the film where you can tell exactly what the character's thinking just by looking at their eyes. Like every just possible thought in their head, like you can just see it right there on screen. And I just think that was something that I noticed throughout the film. There's just so many like incredible shots of characters, of their face when they're experiencing something, and you just really are sucked into this world. It's got great cinematography, compelling story. It just, it's, I don't know, it's really good.
I mean, I agree. I gushed about this when I talked about it last year at IFF Boston, and I watched it a second time, and I liked it even more the second time. And I noticed more nuances and complexities to the characters in the film. And I said this before, I'll say it again. It's so tender, so moving. I love this family. I love their rapport. I love that we see Jacob and Monica, the parents, fighting. And I know that might sound weird because this is such a tight family, but it really lends authenticity and feels really real that he is so intent on pursuing this dream of his of having a garden, and then it transitions to a farm. And he wants to make something of his life, and he wants to make something for his children, and he wants to succeed. And she, wants to stay in California, and she wants to stay in a, Korean community, which totally makes sense too. She's isolated out here, which is why her mother comes to stay with them. And, she doesn't have her church. She doesn't have friends. She doesn't have community. And and that scene towards the end, they're in Dallas to go for David's checkup for his heart. And Jacob has his box of samples of his vegetables, and he's trekking it, with him. And at the end, she's like, you chose the farm over your family. And he's like, no, I didn't. It all worked out. And she's like, no, you did. But it totally makes sense that he would want to, so passionately pursue this dream. And so it is very bittersweet because they're both right. They're both correct. And when she says to him, we're great when things are going well, I don't think we do well when things fall apart, and they're going to fall apart. And it was such a gutting moment, because that really is the test of a strong relationship, is how not only you just weather the good times, but can you weather the bad times too, which then we see when, the fire happens and they do band together, which is lovely. But I love these moments of honesty and just that feels so real. And this film is such an ode to the power of a loving and supportive family. Like, even when you don't agree, you're still there for each other. And I love that. And I love the grandmother so much. She is amazing. Yeah. And I love that she is not at all what David thinks grandmothers are like. And he's like, you're not a real grandmother because you don't bake cookies and you swear. And like, she swears like a sailor. She gambles. Yep. She loves playing cards. She watches wrestling.
She drugs Mountain Dew.
Yes. Like, I just love her. And I love like when David gets in trouble for putting pee in her drink. And she's like, and then they're going to punish him. And she's like, it's okay. He's a sweet boy. It's okay. I just drank a little pee. It was fun.
Yeah.
like this movie's really funny too. And I loved that. And I appreciated so many of the small moments. And you guys are so right about the acting. The acting is just amazing. I mean, I've loved Stephen Yeun since Walking Dead, and he's great in Burning. I mean, he's so great in that. But this is a different character for him, and I love that. And I've read a lot of interviews with him where he talked about, and watched interviews where he talked about how he basically is playing his own father in this film. And he's talked a lot about the premiere at Sundance, how his father was sitting next to him and he looked over and his father was like crying watching this, and he was crying watching this because and Lee Isaac Chung talked about that there are a lot of times that Korean families, the children can't fully communicate with the parents because there's a language barrier, there's a cultural barrier, there's all these barriers. And this was really kind of I'm going to say a love letter in essence, or maybe he has said that, but it's like a love letter to his family and his father, and, kind of showing appreciation for what you did. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so lovely and so nice. Like all of these stories and, he's talked about how this is his most autobiographical film. And I think it very much shows, and it's such a labor of love. And it's very clear that this cast just completely gelled and feels so much like a real family. It's amazing. But yeah, the acting is amazing. And we haven't really talked about her. And I feel like because, Stephen Yeun's so great and Yoon Yoo-jung is so great that we haven't really talked, and the kids are so great. But Han Yi-ti, who plays Monica, is also amazing.
Incredible.
Oh my God. Oh.
I think that she may actually give the strongest performance just because she is, in some way, she's the movie's center because she's always rigid's not the right word. She's unflappable, even though she's flappable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what I'm trying to say. It's like she never freaks, even though she's freaking out. She never freaks out, know?
Yep. She's freaking out inside, but outside she's composed and keeping it together. Yeah.
Yeah.
She definitely has the harder
really,
role.
really well.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No. You mean as far as performing goes, she has the harder role?
I think she has the hardest role just because, in the sense of it's a role that's not the flashiest, it's not the showiest.
Right.
And in that regard, she arguably has the hardest role. But that's like that's like splitting hairs. Like everybody is so amazing in this.
Yeah. I am going to quibble with both of you on one thing.
Oh.
I thought that the fire, though, well done in the movie. I think in story terms, a climactic event like that is a little, I don't want to use the word cheap, but because you've got like, oh, these horrible things have happened and we're splitting up and fire, and now we're all together again and it's going to be fine even though it's still horrible. I'm really, really kind of glossing. I'm making it, I'm taking the piss out of it a little too much, I think, but I just always think about movies. There are lots of movies like this, and of course I can't think of any right now off the top of my head, where you've got like this couple at each other's throats. In this case, very quietly at each other's throats.
Well, sometimes not so quietly, but yes.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, but in an understated sort of way. And then you've got this big thing that happens, and it brings them together. And I just find that it's a smidge. I don't know what you would have done otherwise. I don't have a suggestion, and it didn't take away from my overall appreciation of this moment, but I was just kind of like, I wish they hadn't done that, So anyway.
That's so funny.
Sorry, Megan.
Why are you saying sorry to me?
Well, because you're gushing about this, and I'm like, and here's some cold water.
That's okay. My flame will continue to burn strong. Oh God, that got weird.
Yeah, maybe not the best analogy.
No, especially because we talked about burning earlier. Anyway, and burning here. But see, it's so funny because I agree with you on principle that if this was a lesser film, on principle, because if this was a lesser film, I would agree and I would say this is a cheap shot. This is just a manipulative ploy. But here, I think everything is so meticulously done and so exceptionally well done that it didn't feel like that at all. That just felt like, yep, fuck, what are you going to do when it rains, it pours, and this is another disaster? Yeah, and it just, there was something very, very poetic and very bittersweet about, the fact that the crop that grandma planted is the one crop that could potentially save them, because she destroyed by accident, of course, the other crops. So And it was
Yeah.
and it's a Korean, like it's a Korean crop, and it's, from what I've heard in the interviews, it's a weed, and so, but it's super resilient, and kind of like the family, and that's not my observation. I heard Lee Isaac Chung say that, but yeah, so I found it kind of fitting. Like, to me, it didn't dissuade me from my enjoyment. It didn't lessen it. It didn't cheapen it. It didn't, like, I can see what you mean, but yeah, for me, I'm like, no, it just was another thing that happened, because shit like that does happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially when you have to burn your own trash in a barrel because you can't take it to the dump.
Yes.
I mean, and poor grandma,
Okay,
after
yeah.
she's had a stroke, is trying to put a thing in the trash to burn it. I just feel like it was a combination of factors that I could see it coming. They kept focusing on the trash when they were burning. I'm like, something is going to go wrong later. And then I started putting the pieces together in my head, like, no.
Yeah. I think my favorite shot in the movie may have been two shots. Is when they're all sleeping on the floor at the end of the movie,
Yeah.
which is what Dad suggested at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Grandma and slowly moves in on her, and she's just kind of like, quietly, of course.
Yeah.
For her, I should say. And I know, God, when she had this, like, so the scene where she has the stroke, or when you realize she's had it, at first I thought, we're on David way too long. Is he dead? And then he wakes up, and then you see all the urine on the mattress, and David checking himself. I'm like, oh my God, she's dead.
Mhm.
And then she had a stroke and she's partially paralyzed. And it's just like, what next for this poor fucking family? Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And for Grandma, for that matter.
I know, poor Grandma.
Yeah.
But Grandma's still amazing. Grandma's the best.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, something else about Grandma that I really love is that, because everybody kind of treats David very tenderly, very, kind of with kid gloves, and they're like, don't run because he has a heart condition, and, they worry that his heart could stop at any time. And I love that when he drops the drawer on his foot and it's bleeding everywhere, and she's like, you picked up that drawer and you put it back there? She's like, you're such a strong boy. And he's like, wait, what? And she's complimenting him, and no one has ever said that to him, that he's so strong and resilient. And I love that that's kind of the thing that makes him turn from, you're not a real grandma, to this kind of conspiratorial, let's joke about pee and let's go explore. And yeah, anyway, I just loved that. There's just so many great moments in this movie. I just loved this. And I loved that watching it again just made me love it more. That's the mark for me of a film that's great.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one of many.
Well, then.
There's many markers, but that's one.
It's a pretty strong one.
Yeah.
I'm glad I saw it too, by the way.
I'm glad you did too. I've been telling you guys to watch it forever, so I'm very glad that you guys watched it. Very excited.
It's been on my list for a while, and I'm glad I got to watch it finally.
Mm-hmm. It's a good one. And, it's sad we still don't have enough Asian American, Korean American representation. So it's, and the other thing I want to say about this is that there's been a lot of conversation and discourse around the fact of it being nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, which, it is a foreign language, other than the fact that it's not English. And of course, we don't have a national language here, but that's a whole other conversation. But this is absolutely an American film. Like, this is absolutely about the American dream and its failings.
Yes.
And how it's a myth, but also how people pursue it. And it's good to pursue your dreams, and it's, there's that tension there. But I think we need to, as a society, as a country, we need to stop thinking of American as white and realize there are multiple stories and ethnicities and races, and we need to embrace that and not other it.
For sure.
Yeah, well put.
Thank you. But yeah, that's just more reasons to love this film. I mean, the film is just a great film in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to give another plug for the score, which is by Emil Masari, by the way.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the cinematography. I'm with you, Evan. I loved this. Not that I disliked the score. The score's fine.
Right.
But I loved that. I loved that cinematography. It was so beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some really gorgeous shots. Like this scene where he's smoking a cigarette. How do they make even standing in a field, squatting in a field, smoking a cigarette look fucking awesome?
Right.
I'm not even a smoker. So that's like another nod.
As a former smoker and still my one true love, I can tell you that it's really easy actually to make smoking look fucking awesome. So,
I'm with you, Evan. I think it usually looks gross. And yes, it looks gorgeous here. Well, let's do a recap of where we can see these films and whether or not we'd recommend them. So Shook is on VOD. And Evan, would you recommend this film?
Shook.
I mean, not Shook. I'm sorry. I'm confusing it with Sator. My apologies. I'm talking Sator. Sator is on VOD.
Yes.
And would you recommend Sator? Sorry.
I really wish I could. I feel like I was so disengaged from the story that it's hard for me personally to recommend it. But it did so many great atmospheric things. So I'm kind of like, I'm on the fence.
Okay, no problem. Well, I would recommend it just for its atmosphere alone. Shook. Now we're on Shook, finally.
Right. Which is
Shook
available
is
on Shudder.
Yes.
Yes.
It's available on Shudder now. And would you recommend Shook?
No.
I also would say skip Shook. All right. Framing Britney Spears, which you can catch on FX. You can catch on Hulu. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd recommend.
Dave, that was such a non-committal sure.
Well, it's like Evan said, it's a primer.
Yes.
It's not, the whole story.
Correct. I agree. And then Minari, I would say see it. What would you guys
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay!
Agree.
It's so good. It's so good. Watch it. And that is also on, that's playing virtually in theaters and is, I believe, on VOD. Not yet.
Look out for it.
I can't believe movies are in fucking theaters.
No, this is virtual.
Oh, virtual.
Yes,
Okay.
this is in virtual theaters. Okay, so we want to give a huge thank you to our amazing editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you so much for making us sound great week after week. We really appreciate it and can't thank you enough. You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. Anywhere, just look for us. You can also find us at our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We are everywhere. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok. So follow us in all the social media venues.
Yeah.
You can email us. We would love to hear from you. Send us a comment. Did you like these movies? Did you not? Do you have questions for us? We love to hear from you. So email us at spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can call us at
862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail message. We love hearing those too. We just want to hear from you. And if you like the show, please rate and review us by going to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. You can also rate us at Apple Podcasts, over on Apple Podcasts. That also helps us out tremendously. It gets the word out about the show, so there are more people who can find us. And if you really, really like the show, really like us, maybe you want to join our Patreon. This week, we had an exclusive audio on the cult classic 1979 film, The Warriors, and we put out bonus episodes every single week for our patrons. For $1, you get a thank you on the show. For $5 a month, you get to listen to those weekly bonus episodes as well as our back catalog of bonus episodes. You also get to vote in monthly polls, and we will have a monthly poll this month.
Yeah.
And for $10 a month, you get to tell us what to watch. And we will talk about it. And like we did this week, it was a patron's choice. So we also want to take this moment to thank our fabulous patrons.
Yeah, we want to say thanks to Bill Scahan, to Sean Pensionar, Christopher Jensen, Bob Chipman, Charlie Nash, Davida Margolin, Zach Pigeon, Chris Wilkinson, Max Scoville, Shona Glasgow, Rory Glynn, Shelley M. McCaskill, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Deirdre Crimmins, and of course, Shauna Harris.
Thanks, patrons.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate all our patrons, and we appreciate all our listeners. So thank you so much to listening to the show. We love doing this week in and week out. This has definitely been a labor of love, and it helps us keep ourselves grounded week after week in the mayhem of the world. So thank you for listening.
Yes.
So my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I am also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld or on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
My name is Dave Riedel. I blobbity blee blee blue. I am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
And my name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.